We are live.
Yay!
No, you go. You go.
Okay.
I've been talking my butt off before we started, so go ahead.
Hello, BookTube. So with us tonight we have David Green, who is the author of we got The Devil Walks in Blood and
Solitude
In
Shadow.
Solitude Shadow. And what was the prequel?
Dead Man Walking.
Dead Man Walking.
Yeah, which are two separate series. And
well, the Dead Man Walking and The Devil Walks in Blood are the same series. And
yeah,
In Solitude Shadow is it's high fantasy, correct?
I would call it high fantasy, even epic fantasy, even though it doesn't have the epic fantasy length.
Right, that was part of the idea. Yes, that was part of the idea of it. But the sequel does have the length as well. But yeah, the first one was, can I do an epic fantasy? Hi, Nikki. Can I do an epic fantasy in a reasonable way?
Yeah, and you did, because it had an epic feel.
Yeah, it does. It has the epic feel to it. It doesn't have to be 3,000 pages and ramble on and on about
Of course, if you wanted to go 3,000 pages over 15 novels or 10 novels, whatever, I'd be just fine with that. But yeah, do you agree that there is a lot of epic fantasy that really doesn't earn its epic length these days?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a catch-all phrase now. Epic fantasy and fantasy has splintered so much into so many different subgenres that, I mean, I think In Solitude Shadow is epic fantasy, but it's also a lot of other things as well at the same time. It's dark fantasy. It's some people call it grimdark, but I don't think it is quite grimdark. I think it is a little bit more hopeful than grimdark. But yeah, there is a lot of things that kind of go. I think there's certain things that you need to have in it to be epic fantasy. I think
there's a brush of grimdark in Solitude Shadow. It made me cry a couple of times.
Good. A couple of times. That's great.
Nikki's book did too, and I'm still not happy about it. But yeah, Nikki, I know what you're talking about, and it's ridiculous. But here we go.
That's my publisher, by the way. So
hi, Michelle,
the owner of Erie River Publishing, and also BookBox Canada as well. So this is a new thing that is coming soon.
Okay,
cool. So when were your books published?
So as they are now, because obviously there was a kind of a version of the Nick Holleran one first, but I don't really talk about that too much because it was quite a different, and it was my first real attempt at doing anything really. But In Solitude Shadow came out in June last year, and The Devil Walks in Blood came out in July last year, actually. And so it seems like I've been really lazy since then. But I have been doing something.
Okay.
So we have a. That's the way we're going to do it. I have a handful of canned questions, and there'll be people who probably have comments and questions in the comment section that we'll bring up and go over. So just to get it out of the way, because it's one of the first things that people always ask is what is your I have it, huh? What?
Come on.
Kiss my foot.
We're good at this.
What are your writing habits? Do you like sit down every day and type religiously every single day, or do you just sort of attack your computer when you get the inspiration?
I'd love to attack my computer sometimes. No, I do. I'm very regimented. It's weird, right? Because it's like such a creative thing, but like I'm really regimented with it. So I will write every day. I'll write at set times. I have an Excel sheet with everything I'm working on and how many words I need to do and where I'm up to and all this kind of stuff. I get very stressed out if I don't hit my goals. So I'm like, I have to hit my goals, like no matter what it is. So if I do a bit of writing and I've not hit it, I will go back later on that day when I have a spare 5 minutes and just do a few more. But I can do it pretty quickly as well, so that's not too much of a problem. But yeah, I'm really regimented to an insane degree. It's actually sickening. It sickens me when I look at what I do.
Michelle, me too. I want to gush about Nick Holleran so bad. I loved those books. The Devil Walks in Blood and Dead Men Walking. Loved them so much. I was telling Scott earlier that the main character, Nick Holleran, he reminds me of sort of a mix between Harry Dresden and John Taylor from the Nightside series.
Right.
If you've ever read it, he's Simon R. Green. He's a British author.
No, I've not read him, but I've been told a few times that I should. So.
They're fantastic.
I actually prefer him over Jim Butcher. I like his books more. They are darker in a lot of ways.
The Nightside books are pretty darn dark.
Yeah, they are, and they're great. I mean, I really enjoy them. But yeah, it's interesting. You've never read those because John Taylor and Nick Holleran, they are a similar character, although way different at the same time.
Oh yeah, they're both private investigators in a thoroughly magical world.
Right.
And the magical world sort of takes place overimposed our world. And that's actually one thing I really liked about The Devil Walks in Blood and Dead Man Walking. The idea is the main character, Nick Holleran, he's a private investigator who died like 5 years ago, and he was brought back from the dead and has been in literal hell ever since. And hell is here.
Well, yes. he's kind of living in both worlds in a sense. I find that fascinating.
It's wonderful. I love it so much. I love that Nick Holleran tries desperately to be. He tries so hard to be witty and just sort of debonair, and he just fails miserably.
Yeah. Right. You know, that's the thing with Nick Holleran is that he's very much like me. He is an exaggerated version of me. That he is my brother. That's why I've never read him. I'm not reading my own. It's not my brother. But yeah. So Nick,
I just realized they're both like
me. He has more hair in his head and less hair in his face. He just kind of twists it around, and he's American. But he's also a massive schmuck as well at the same time. Like he's just. You know, he thinks he's very clever and he thinks he's very witty and he thinks he's very charming. But he's not any of those things really. But
let's face it, he's like a lot of Americans.
But you know, his heart's in the right place. You know, most of the time he's endearing in a way. You know, he wants to try the right thing eventually. But he's a person that wants a lot of connection with people, even though he might say that he doesn't. But he craves the connection with people.
Yeah,
that's actually one of the main things, one of the bigger things about the Nick I won't call him Holleran, the Nick Holleran books, is that he's one of the many people that's stuck in hell that doesn't really belong there.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah. I love the fact that the protagonists in this book are not who you would expect them to be.
Yeah.
Outside of Nick Holleran.
Yeah. Well, but a lot of the questions are, I mean, a lot of the interesting things to us were that the people is almost the opposite of that. The people who you would think would be the protagonists are not exactly the protagonists, and I love that because you do see in a lot of whether you have horror films or whether you have fantasy films or whatever, you have this line that is good and a line that and then across that line is bad. But a whole lot of your characters straddle a line, and I like that a lot because we're still not sure who is good and who is evil in this Nick Holleran series, and I love that. I think it's really cool because you go and you watch a show like Supernatural, you know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. If you have the name Demon, well, you're evil.
Right.
That's not always the case here.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that was something that was interesting to me when I was coming up with the world, was just how to I love fantasy. Yeah, that's right. I love fantasy, and I love fantastical worlds, and I love classic fantasy where it's good versus evil. Like, I love Lord of the Rings, and I love all that. I love good guys and bad guys, but what I was trying to do was to make it more, and this is within Solitude Shadow as well, with the Holleran worlds, is to take that fantastical side and to ground it a little bit, to make it more realistic. And that way is because you might despise someone in real life, or you might hate someone or not like them, but it doesn't mean that they're evil or they're bad. It's just someone that you don't like. They have a different point of view to you and a different way of looking at things. So that's what I really try and do. And the good guys will have other good guys that don't like them, and vice versa, and especially with Holleran, with the whole kind of heaven and hell aspect of the devil being so far quite a nice person.
Yeah.
Well, that was quite funny, and just just the whole creation of heaven and hell and this divide is just basically down to a misunderstanding, really, a different point of view, as Obi-Wan might say. I thought that was quite an interesting kind of thing to do it, and have someone caught up in the middle of that that is completely out of the depth was something that I kind of thought would be fun.
Yeah, Nikki, it's a good point. Moral gray. That's a very, very big running theme in both books, especially in Solitude Shadow. There's a major issue that the main character has with her mother, that she's looking at it entirely in black and white, and it really, really comes to the point that she has to see in shades of gray just to get past it.
Right.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. It added a really really interesting dynamic that we both enjoyed a lot. Becky didn't know what to think of it at first. She was like, I don't know if I like this character.
It's because it made me cry. Twice.
The daughter character, what was her name?
Colleen.
Yeah. Colleen. And,
am I saying it right?
Yes, you are.
Because we never know if we have the accent correct or the pronunciations correct, because there are different pronunciations, and
right.
We could be drawing from Greek inspiration. We don't know.
British English.
She could be clean.
I didn't know the correct pronunciations of some of them either. And when someone says it to me, I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I like it. Let's go with that.
Yes. But yeah, Colleen. Yeah, Colleen is. Some people love Colleen, some people don't. And that's fine. I think that's one of the things about epic and high fantasy, is that your kind of readers are they expect going into it that they're going to like the main characters, the good characters. And Colleen, I would say, is a good character, like a good person, but she's also very, very stubborn. She's also completely wrong about her point of view, in my opinion. And that's fine. Not everyone makes the right decisions, and not everyone has the right point of view. But also, I'm a parent, so I can see it completely from Colleen's point, from her mother Zana's point of view. And there's nothing that I wouldn't do for my son. There's absolutely nothing that I wouldn't do for him. I would, in that situation, I would have done what Zana did. No question. But also, when I was thinking about this character, I was like, well, when I was a teenager, or a younger adult, I didn't have the best relationship with my parents, and there's some decisions that they made that to this day I'm like, they're not the right decisions. They did that decision for them, and it wasn't for me, and this and this. So I was trying to get that side of it as well, where it's like there's always a different perspective on decisions that are made, and your parents might make a decision that they think is absolutely the best decision for you, and they will stand by it, but then the child might say, no, this is wrong, you shouldn't have done this. And so it's interesting that she does get a reaction, Colleen, and I love it. If people didn't feel strongly about it, then I wouldn't have done my job correctly.
So Nikki asked a really important question that I kind of want to expound upon. In Solitude Shadow has some very, very heavy themes, including what's the word I'm looking for? Where you would kill an entire race of people. Genocide, including genocide, war, world war. Where did you draw your inspirations for that story? Were any of them based in our history?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of history. I'm a big history buff. So some of it was ancient history, some of it was recent history. Some of it was from like video games and stuff as well. I'm a big video game player, and I was something that heavily influenced the kind of social aspects of In Solitude Shadow was a game called Dragon Age. I don't know if you've ever played it. It was on the PC and Xbox and everything like that. And that was very much, it was different for me as a fantasy fan of seeing this kind of thing where there is a real persecution of race inside the fantasy, to the point where real xenophobia and everything like that. So that was one of the influences. Another one then was the Roman Empire as well. I kind of wanted to do a real, the Roman Empire, what they would do is, like, obviously, that's a city, and it spread out, and did this like Springhaven did. But they would sometimes take other people's cultures. They go over the Greek, and they were like, we quite like your god structure. We're going to just do the same thing, but change the name. And this. Whereas Hopeville is very much like it's our way or nothing, right? So I wanted to kind of explore that. And then the other side of it, obviously, I was writing it in 2020, so it was just during the first lockdown. We're a few months into the first lockdown. So that's where the kind of solitude kind of thing came from. So every single one of the characters that we follow is in some kind of solitude, right? In some kind of isolation, even if it's self-imposed or if it's through circumstances. And the other thing as well, what's happening in the country right next to me was Brexit. And I just thinking about how is it that they're just trying to, this little island nation that used to rule the world pretty much is now forcing everyone away from each other, and there's rampant, everything that they were doing to justify their decisions and actions was all based on, to my eyes, was based on xenophobia. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to explore in a fantasy world, because it's something that I came across often. And it was a way for me to kind of work through it. Like I lived in England, my dad's English, my mum's Irish, I lived in Ireland. And it was an interesting thing just for me to kind of look at this situation and try and kind of make some kind of sense of it, and to try and look at how people make those decisions justify it. Justify their actions and everything. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that in the second book. But it was something that I really enjoyed kind of working on, and it's something that people kind of respond to quite a lot. People, when they read this kind of fantasy and they see that elves involved, they expect like forests, and they expect these wise kind of creatures, and they don't expect slaves basically, and living in slums, and feral creatures, what the ones that are in the wild still are. So it was interesting.
Yeah, what you're talking about, the slums. Have you ever seen the movie District 9?
Yes, yeah.
What you were talking about with the elves living in slums reminded me a lot of that. We have these absolutely amazing, incredible creatures, and of course, first thing we do is lock them up.
Right.
Because we don't understand them.
Yeah.
It's
because they look different or they sound different.
It made me cry again.
Yeah. He does that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to books.
There's a few bits. I mean, one of the bits that I kind of thought was really effective for me, because obviously I have the Zana and Colleen relationship was something I did a lot of work on, because I wanted to get, obviously they're both female, so I wanted to make that feel authentic, and then the mother and daughter relationship I wanted to make feel authentic. But there's a father-son relationship in it as well, and obviously I found that a lot easier because I have a young son. But the scene with Cade outside of the slums with the little boy, when he gets hit by the stone and he's bleeding, and Cade tries to help him.
That made me cry.
Is that it? Yeah, good, excellent. Because I find that bit, just a bit where the boy is just like tells him that he hates him, and Cade's like, I know, it's just like yeah.
Oh, it's so upsetting. Moving over to Holleran because he's funny. It says, I really like in the Holleran books. I said Holleran, didn't I?
Yeah.
That it's just some guy trying to make his way in a crazy setting. I agree. Did you ever have any trouble keeping Nick Holleran just some guy? I thought I said Holleran.
Oh, close enough.
No, I didn't, because that was what I was trying to do with him. Was this is again something that I don't think anyone actually believes when I say it to people. But I'd never read Dresden when I started writing the first Nick Holleran book. I read it afterwards, because when it came out and people were like, "This is kind of like the Dresden Files," and I was aware of the Dresden Files, and I knew that Harry Dresden was a wizard. So I was like, Nick Holleran is not going to be a wizard. He's not going to have any powers. There might be items that he can use, this. And that's why a lot of people also liken it to Supernatural, because people are like, you must really like Supernatural. And I hadn't watched any Supernatural either. I have now. I'm up to season 10, and I can see the similarities there, because obviously Dean and Sam, for most of the time, are just normal people, and then weird things happen to them. So that's what I wanted to do with him. I wanted him just to be a normal person doing his best. There is something else going on there in the background, which I've kind of hopefully laid the seeds for a little bit. He is essentially a normal person that is not remarkable in any kind of way at the moment, apart from the fact that he is one of the people that can see the truth. Yeah,
I think what people are comparing Nick Holleran to Harry Dresden for is the fact that he's a guy who's moving through a world that shouldn't exist, right, that people have no idea exists, and he's just desperately trying to survive. Right. and that includes make enough money to pay his bills, which you never think would be the issue with a hellscape scenario. You would think money would go out the window, but no.
Yeah, people have got to work, haven't they? They've got to pay the bills. Like, he's got an office, he's got a house. Where's the money coming from? Right?
The dude died 5 years ago and came back from the dead, and he still has to pay his rent.
Exactly. Until death is permanent, that there's no escaping it.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of world we live in.
Exactly. But one of the things that I really like about Nick is that he's got that $10,000 check in his drawer in his office that he refuses to cash, because it's come from the job that put him in the state that he's in, and I think that's really
it's his own blood money.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and he refuses to check it, cash it, which I think is really it's quite of an endearing kind of thing, because the thing with Nick as well, I can go backwards in time with Nick, and I can that 5 years time jump at the start of Dead Man Walking. I can explore that as well if I want to, and there is something set in that time period. where he's a little bit more rough around the edges, and it's more like, you know, learning the ropes a little bit more. So it's fun to do. He's a fun character.
One thing that I really, really enjoy about your books, but and it's present in both or all three. There's diversity. You tackle a lot of different issues, including some LGBTQ things.
Race.
There's a lot of race issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is interesting because out of all the independently published novels, or the novels that came from small publishers and things like that, that seems to be actually more sensitively written than in a lot of big published books. You know, books from big publishing houses. You know, they have those, but a lot of times they're just not written in a sensitive way. Whereas the more independent and smaller publishing houses and the independent authors seem to tackle those with more sensitivity. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that is. I have no idea. I'm not sure how some books make it past into publishing. But yeah.
Well, we saw just recently one book that made it past that completely shut a publishing house down.
Yes, oh yeah, I know about that one. Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to put Nikki's question up simply because I had to read it. Everybody else has to read it now. And tacking on to that, do you like meticulously outline your books and follow it to a T, or do your characters ever get away with you like mine tend to do?
Right. So yeah, just a couple of things. I'm glad as well that you picked up on the diversity thing as well, because I think it is important. Because again, it's part of the whole grounding thing, is that I want what I'm writing to reflect the world as it is, and not as some people see it. And you know, I am a straight white man, and I could very easily just write about straight white men, right? Very easily just do it. But that is not the world, right? I make up 5% of the world's population the way that I am, probably less than 5% actually. So it's not the world, right? So I want to kind of put this that anyone can enjoy. And what was great about working with Erie River on these was that the race stuff, particularly in The Devil Walks in Blood, Michelle just let me do what I wanted to do with it and didn't try to change it at any point, which I think diluting that kind of thing can be offensive to people, because it was the stuff that Diana went through, the character, and her family in the 60s is something that happened to a lot of families, I think, in not just in America but in other parts of the world as well. And I think to kind of, and then the stuff with organized religion as well, with something coming from an island and everything, was something that happened that I think just to kind of shy away from it and to pull the punch a little bit would have been doing it all a disservice. So it was something, and that's something that I was very, very thankful for with Erie River, was just out of all the development notes and editing notes, that stuff were pretty much just, in some aspects, we asked for a little bit more emotion, go into it a little bit deeper, which was great, because you know, you want someone to kind of have your back on that kind of stuff if you want to deal with it. So yeah, I was happy that people responded to that one. To the other question, I sometimes line, sometimes I don't. It depends on the project. The Devil Walks in Blood was completely out. Dead Man Walking wasn't. The next Nick Holleran book is not outlined. I'm just pantsing that one pretty much. I do it in a weird way though. I know what I'm going to write before I write it, and I'm just kind of like, this is what it's about. This is the key things. This. In Solitude Shadow wasn't outlined, but the sequel Path of War was. But even then, I was expecting Path of War to be about 80,000 words, and I had my line, which was about 10 pages. And I was up to about the third page, and there was just a line that says, Colleen, an adventure. I didn't know what this adventure was going to be, what was going to happen on it, but I just knew she needed some time to do something. And I was thinking, that's going to be like a chapter, or maybe 2 chapters, and she's going to come back and, get to do this. That section ended up being about a 25,000 word section in the middle of the book, which is like proper sword and sorcery fantasy, high octane, things exploding, battles, magic battles, all this kind of stuff. People running across rooftops and jumping through windows, and all this kind of stuff. I had so much fun with it. And it was just literally one line, the outline. And then when I finished it and went back to the outline, I was like, I'm at 70,000 words already, and I've got another 7 pages of this outline left to do. So,
wow.
It can change, and that actually, the series was going to be a trilogy still until that point, and then I talked again to Pusha, and I was like, this book is going to be, if I do this, it will be about 200,000 words. The next book will be about 300,000 words, which I don't want to do. So I was like, I'd like to do 4 books and move some of the stuff out of the outline for this one into the next book, and just rejig some things around. I think it'll make more sense. And Erie River were like, great.
So Paths of War is your upcoming book,
right.
the second book of the Empire of Ruin.
Mm-hmm.
How many words is it? Like,
so it's we're still doing line edits at the moment, but we're near the end of it. I expect it's going to be. So line edits is just, some words get added, some things get added in, some things get added out, but just little bits and bits. So it'll be about 135,000 words, which is double in Solitude Shadow already. So that's why I didn't want to do even bigger, and then a third book even bigger again, like a huge amount. I didn't want to do just that's such a weird kind of creeping size. So 4 books would be a little bit smoother, and just keep them all at around the kind of 125,000, 130,000 word mark. Yeah. It's just I didn't want to look. The main reason was I don't want to look at them on my own shelf, and just the size difference would annoy me too much.
So I'm leaving this comment up by Nikki. She's talking about Diana. I want to sell your book to everybody who's watching. Diana is the coolest character, but in the first 3 or 4 pages of Dead Men Walking, we meet this character. She's a wonderful little. She's a little black girl. She's 15.
Yeah.
She's 15 years old, and we meet her when she is standing facing the corner of his office, and that's all she does.
Oh, he sees ghosts, by the way.
Yeah, he sees ghosts. She stands there, and she faces the corner of his office, and she hasn't moved in 5 years, and it's the creepiest thing I've ever read.
Right.
I was sitting there and going, "Oh my God, is this whole book like this?"
Yeah, it actually reminds me of some like Japanese horror stories. And so it reminded me a little bit of like what is his name? He was actually an Irish writer who moved to Japan for 30 years or so. But I cannot remember his name. But he became a horror writer while he was in Japan, and wrote Japanese horror stories from an Irish perspective. And I thought they were just amazing. I'll get you his name. Maybe you've read it, maybe not.
Yeah.
I cannot remember his name.
Your ladies, she's giving all your secrets away in the comment section.
I did completely change part. Yeah, what did I change? I added in a new prologue, and then changed the original prologue to be the first chapter, and then took that out completely. So it's just that's just we're going to try and release it in some way for people to read it. I don't tend to write prologues first. I usually leave them And with this one, I wrote it first, and then when I got to like kind of the end, I was like, it's not really. Actually, no, it was when I got to about the middle of the book, it wasn't really working. Prologue, and there was not. I wasn't too happy with the through line for the whole book, so I wrote a new prologue that solidified like a new through line, and it was a lot easier to write after that point. But it did change a few things in the book. So I think that is the problem with outlining. Sometimes though, sometimes if you're really rigid to outline, it can make the editing process be a bit longer in a way, because it's like, because if you change something, you have to change everything else. Whereas if you're pantsing, it can be a little bit messier, but also you kind of like, yeah, I like both ways.
Both ways. They both seem fun to me, but with what I have a story, I was telling you earlier, I have a story I would like to tell. Would you advise a new author to outline, or just to start writing?
Yeah, I think try it both ways. I'll do what kind of I do, which is halfway in between. I like to call it planting, where it's like you stood at the back door of your house and you can see your garden and you can see the gate to your garden leading away. I need to get to that garden gate and leave. But the way that I get there, I know that I have to go past this tree or this slide or this thing here. But the way that I go around it doesn't really matter. So I get to them, go around them, and get to my ending, right? And that's the way that I'm most comfortable with. But that's only because I outlined and I have done it completely pantsing as well. And I kind of think this way is the better way. So yeah, the best thing is just to get writing and to settle on a way that works best for you. The one bit of advice I would give to any writer, though, is to show your work to people as early as possible in the process, because there is a lot of people that don't use beta readers and they don't use this kind of thing. And if they're writing to have the objective to have people read this thing at some point, you want people to have read it as early as possible, so that when it does get published, lots of people have seen it already and it's the best book that it can possibly be. And sometimes the feedback can hurt and sometimes the criticism can hurt, but that's whole part of the adventure, right? Because if you don't do that and it goes out and someone reads it, those reviews hurt a lot more when they're bad, because some of them can be brutal. And that's even for things that have been through that process of local beta readers and editors and development editors and everything like that. So yeah, I would always say to people, get a couple of beta readers that you really trust that will tell you the truth, which is important, and try to, in a nice way, right? They don't want to actually make you cry, but they might. But that's fine. That's what you're asking them to do, and show it to people as early as you can, because the book or whatever it is you're working on will be better for it.
Have a question. I think we were talking just a couple of minutes ago about how In Solitude Shadow has a lot of themes that can be drawn from our own history. What kind of research did you have to do for In Solitude Shadow?
Yeah, I kind of looked tongue-tied. I'm a bit of a history buff anyway, so the Roman Empire sort of stuff I just kind of knew anyway, and I looked into it a little bit briefly. The terrain and way of life is kind of based on a Mediterranean way of life and Mediterranean kind of 16th century kind of thing. So I kind of looked a little bit into that a little bit. But I do love the Mediterranean. I've been to like Portugal and Cyprus and Greece and Croatia and all that kind of stuff. So seen a lot of the ruins there and everything as well that were from like Roman emperor ruins and everything. But I kind of really wanted to look into that kind of way of life from the 16th century. Like I didn't want to do like a Northern European medieval setting, because there's so many of them, right? They're just everywhere. And
yeah, a lot of fantasy draws from medieval settings.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. I think it's great. But I think there's when you watch The Witcher or play the video games, and which I actually think the video games are better than the books, to be honest with you. But when you look at that, it's such a different kind of take because Eastern European, and it's a different way of life, and the buildings all look different, the diet is different, and all this kind of stuff. So I wanted to kind of do that and look at Mediterranean kind of way because I didn't want to do like Mongolian or Asian or something like that because I'm not familiar with that culture, right? But I'm European, so I was thinking, well, I'll do somewhere that is different in Europe, but I am European, so I've been there, I've seen it, and that's why I wanted to just research it a little bit more. And the main research was mother and daughter relationships. That was the main thing. Just looking and trying to read as much books from female authors that were about from female perspectives. I came across some amazing authors in that time doing that as well. A lot of great authors like Nikki. Anyway, but the book I kind of I read a little bit of it, a few chapters here and there, and some other things at the time. And Rachel Renner, who's an amazing urban fantasy author, I came across her work as well at the same time as some other people. But that was the main thing, was just trying to get, because if that relationship didn't work, the whole book wouldn't have worked, and it was really important to make it work, because otherwise I was screwed.
Yeah. Well, that relationship between Colleen and say her name for me, her mother,
Zana.
Yeah. That relationship is actually one of the few softer parts of the book. It has some, like I said earlier, it has some really grim, dark brushes in there. But there's one scene that really, really got to me, and it's just a scene where Zana is sitting there thinking about Colleen. And their relationship is still on the rocks. They're still not talking freely, but Zana is so grateful that there's anything there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful scene. It really is. I really love the relationship between the two. And like you said, the relationship between Cade and his boy, it's very, very natural, and I understand that came from you and your relationship with your son. You did a wonderful job of capturing that softness between two very hardened individuals.
Right. Yeah. Thanks very much. It was tricky. Colleen. It's funny, even though I understood and agreed with Zana's viewpoint more than Colleen's, it was easier to write Colleen. Colleen was very, very easy to write. I guess because she's not too much younger than I am, and I've been in that position where I've been angry at my parents, I suppose, and what have you. Whereas Zana was a lot harder to get right. Too much in the first draft. She was too aloof, which was the wrong kind of thing to do. Because I was trying to get that kind of wiser kind of teacher aspect to it, because she's teaching Arlo, so she has to have that kind of thing. But it was too often it strayed into the kind of thing where she was too rigid. I really wanted it to not think that emotion was a weakness, and I really wanted it to feel what was happening, and that relief when a daughter first reaches back out to her again after years, and that need to grasp onto that, but also to be like, I have to give her space and let her come back to me and everything. It was tough. It was tough to do. She was the character I worked with most of the not changes, but tweaks, and just honing her character was the hardest one to do by far, by far.
like Nikki says there, it's refreshing. It was refreshing to see a mother-daughter relationship, even if it's one that's thoroughly on the rocks. You don't get that a lot in fantasy. Honestly, I think a lot of it's because you don't get a lot of female protagonists in good high fantasy anymore. It's more prominent now, but it doesn't happen a whole lot.
Well, it doesn't happen that much outside of YA.
Yeah,
it happens. You'll see that in YA a lot more than you do in the more adult fantasy fiction, and so
sure,
it's nice to see.
Well, you get a whole lot of misogyny, and especially in the older epic fantasy. I'm reading the Belgariad right now. Have you ever read the Belgariad?
Several times, yeah. It's right.
It's great.
I enjoy them for what they are, but they are very, very of their time.
Yeah, you got. If you're not Aunt Polgara, you ain't.
Right.
Every female in that book or in that series, except for Polgara and to a lesser extent Sinedra, is they're awful.
Right.
They're just awful.
And even Polgara is relegated to being. Well, when we first meet her, she cooks everyone's food, right? And she's
yeah. And then once she gets past that, she's a harridan.
Right.
Yeah. So it's very nice to see, but again, I think that goes along with your penchant for diversity. It's very, very nice to see people that are not usually in these parts just banging it up. I love it.
Right. Well, I think it's one of the things as well. Like I think in fantasy, there's any kind of female protagonist, there seems to be, and again, it's changing now, which is great. There has always seemed to be this need for them to be very masculine, right? And they had to be tougher than other characters, or they had to be more of an attitude than all the other characters, and they had to be this. And I don't think you can be strong and feminine, right? There's a different type of strength, and you know, Colleen is LGBTQ. She's a warrior. She is a warrior. She's a mage, but she's still feminine, right? And that's fine, right? And
she has emotions, and she's perfectly happy having emotions, which is so nice.
Right. Yeah. Well, I tried.
Yeah. You know, I don't. Have you ever seen the Phantasm movie series?
I have, yeah. Yes.
And it was either the second or the third movie. There was a character in there. She was a female character, and but she was such a cartoon, in that it was nothing but this woman playing a man, which there's nothing wrong with that. That works. But that's the way that in the 80s and 90s in horror films that tough females always have to be masculine.
Right.
And and I think that can be a problem.
Then we got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and everything was fixed.
Yeah, they're all Michelle Rodriguez characters. I don't know if you know who Michelle Rodriguez is. She was in Fast and the Furious, and she's great for what she is, but she's almost a caricature of herself now.
Not a fan of Michelle Rodriguez.
Well, I think she's fine. I just don't.
I know her from Lost. I was a big fan of Lost. I was like, oh, it's Michelle Rodriguez. Yeah.
I didn't realize she was in that.
She was for a little bit, and they killed her off quite quickly because everyone hated her.
Hey, Nikki, that's a good point. It's the Captain Marvel treatment. The moment she became a superhero, they gave her shoulder pads, these big old guns, and cut her hair off.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, just let people be themselves, right? It's there's all different types of people in the world, and it's great. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't either. But I really like that about your characters. They're very real people. Yeah. Even in going across over to Dead Man Walking and The Devil Walks in Blood, you're Nick Holleran. He's just some dude who got stuck in hell and is just trying to get through. And his girl and the girl and Rosa, she's a woman. She's just some gal who's desperately trying to get her dude to commit to something.
Yeah, and what I liked about Rosa is she's okay with what happens. You know, she's not some little screaming person who goes running.
She's not a wilting flower.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And she makes mistakes as well. You know, she still makes mistakes. You know, she's that was an interesting one, writing that, and I got some really good advice from my editor on that one. Actually, we had a good discussion about and the show. We had a good discussion about Rosa, and it changed to something else for a little while, and I didn't like the change so much, and it went back to more or less where it was, because I was very much of, I don't want her just to be captured because of being the love interest and what. I wanted her to have some kind of agency about it, and I didn't mind that she made a mistake because of that, because people make mistakes. People do silly things sometimes, and they think they're in the right, and that's fine. You know, and I think that's a kind of a modern way of writing as well. There's sometimes people want the good guys to be like infallible, and they don't like seeing Luke Skywalker make a mistake, right? They want him to be like this knight in shining armor, right? But that's not the way the world works. So that was interesting with Rosa to try and do that. But yeah, I mean, she's more annoyed at Nick because he won't let her into his world and he won't commit. And she's like, "Look, I'm okay with this." And what I thought was interesting with them is they're in an half relationship, and they're I don't know if you like this scene, but the scene where they're having the date and they're just having that like back and forth. I really like that scene, and I like how. She's like, "Oh, well, I had a boyfriend," where it kind of, and Nick's like, "You've got a boyfriend?" And she's like, "Well, you know, not anymore, but she's just sitting by the phone waiting for you to ring me every night." You know, she's got and lived a life. It just so happens that when they've got back in touch, she's available again, right? And she's like, "Well, I'll listen to what he's got to say."
She's sassy, and she's not a damsel in distress. You're right. Nick is not a knight in shining armor, and she's not a damsel in distress, and it makes them very, very relatable. She doesn't have this crazy power, and he's not all seeing and completely infallible. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So back to some of the questions. You're obviously a reader. Have you always been a huge reader? And if so, what is your favorite book?
Right. Anyone who's watching this who has seen me talk will now all be shouting "Wheel of Time" at the screen, and yes, that is what I'm about to say.
That's the comment about the trees. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I've read The Wheel of Time an insane amount. I was one of these people I kind of picked up in the late 90s, early 2000s, so I was a teenager. And I was looking for something a little bit more kind of different in my fantasy at that point. I read Tolkien, I'd read all of Tolkien at that point, and like Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales and what have you. And I'd read Eddins, and I had read... I tried Thomas Covenant, but it was too much for me at the time. Because Thomas Covenant is just such an unlikable person, and I was with that kind of thing. I was like, I don't want to read about a person like this. Right? I want to read about Belgarian and Frodo and all this kind of stuff, and Aragorn and everyone like that. I was a bit too young for it. But I was obviously looking for something a little bit more kind of adult, I suppose. So I found Wheel of Time, and it was up to its 9th book at that point. So I devoured the series. I absolutely loved it. It had everything that I wanted. It had really interesting characters. It had bad guys and good guys, people in the middle. It had loads of Arthurian legend stuff, which I'm a big fan of. It had loads of that kind of stuff in it, and it had epic world building and everything. But obviously, it was 9 books at the time, and I researched it, and I was like, the 10th book, it's not going to be out for another year or so. So I was like, I'm just going to go off and read something else. But then every time when a new book got the date, its release date, I was like, I'm going to reread the series in preparation.
Wow.
Reread it, and obviously the length of time between books was growing, so it gave me more time to reread it. And then Robert Jordan died, so that gave me even more time to reread it, because I was like, well, this is all we have, so I'm going to read this a lot. And then Brandon Sanderson took over, and I was like, I'll read it again.
So you read the Wheel of Time when you were a teenager?
The first 9 books when I was a teenager, yeah. I read this, to answer Nikki's question, I read the Silmarillion when I was 12 or 13, I think, the first time. I read Lord of the Rings when I was in high school, but before I started secondary school, and I started secondary school when I was 11, so I read that very early. But yeah, the Silmarillion, I love the Silmarillion. Yeah, I think it's not a book, it's not a story, it's
like a handguide.
Yeah, it's a history that never happened, but it's a history, there's no real narrative in it or anything like that. But I love it. I just think it's just nuts. Right, and when you take some of these, when you take some of the stories from it, particularly the first age stuff, like the children of Hurin and Alicent, and take them out and isolate them, the great stories. But yeah, the Silmarillion, it's not for everyone. But I'll read every now and then. Yeah, I really. They really love Silmarillion. So
I have an important question for you. Mm-hmm. You've read David Eddings. Have you ever read The Redemption of Alphalis?
I have, yes. I have read that a few times, actually.
Did you love it as much as I did?
Right, yeah, I did. I really did like it when I first. And you know what? I like it every time that I read it, to be fair. See, the thing is with Eddings, right, is this. Every single one of his stories is the same, with different characters.
Yeah. They're very formulaic.
And Redemption of Alphalis is basically the 10 books of the first 5 and the second 5 Belgarian books, and Sparhawk. Because it's the
Belgariad and the Malorian and the Elenium and the Tamuli all wrapped up together.
It's just all there in Redemption of Alphalis. Yeah, it's just there in one book.
And it's magical.
yeah, and I find it really amusing. I just like how bright and breezy it is. I like how all the good guys kind of get along with the bad guys. They're kind of just have a little chat with them and have crack a little bit of wise with each other, and they're just I enjoy them for what they are, right? And I think every time that I've read Redemption of Alphalis, I've really enjoyed it.
But I'm so excited. You're the first person I've come across who's read it, and it's one of my favorite books.
This guy, Adrian Fletcher, he has read it as well a few times. Yeah,
and it goes deeper than that, Adrian. It's like Belgarian is a great character named Frodo, and Belgarath is a great character named Gandalf. Oh. so it's there's no originality at all, but it's so good.
I mean, probably the biggest ripoff of Lord of the Rings are the books by Terry Brooks, and I still love them.
Yeah. And to be fair, he admits it as well.
Yes, he does. Yeah, but he was kind of the first one to bring back that type of fantasy and to make it popular again. You know, I mean, he was the one that made it popular.
Yeah, you could superimpose Gandalf and Alanon over each other. They're the same character.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I think Lord of the Rings, as famous as it is, probably has a lot to do with Terry Brooks these days, because a lot of people read that series first. A lot of people read the Belgariad before they ever read Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
We did.
Right.
So,
Adrian brings up a really, really good point that I wanted to ask you about. And it's something we were talking about in Dead Man Walking and The Devil Walks in Blood. Nick Holleran has a very specific way of speaking. I'm absolutely in love with the word reckon.
Right.
We love the word.
Yeah.
Did his manner of speaking come up in like your outlines? Did you have to keep coming back to change his diction, or did it just sort of pour onto the page?
Yeah, his character is like is such a strong voice that it's easy to write him, because I don't write anyone else like him in anything else that I work on. And the reason is for that is because when I made the decision to write it first person present tense, I was like, it has to be his voice always. And he needed to have a turn of phrase and just a little kind of way of speaking. And I didn't want it to be very, very stilted, like someone was telling you a story. I wanted it to be like it's his thoughts, his stream of consciousness. And he thinks of himself as I know he's up in Oregon, but he thinks of himself as a cowboy, I think. And and seeing as he's basically me, one of his favorite TV shows, so he may have some speech patterns like Al Swearnigan or someone like that. That's kind of a bit charactery, but I think it suits it all right. I think
It makes him a very well-rounded character. The way he speaks, you can even without indication of who is talking, you can tell who's talking in those books just by the manner of their speech, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and that was something that was at first. I think on the first version of it, a lot of the characters did have a similar way of speaking to him. I wanted to do this really stylized world, like John Wick. Actually, John Wick was a big influence on Nick Holleran, the world building side of it, and some of the advice from on the development edit side when it went to Erie River was just to make sure that like Ruby in particular doesn't speak like Nick, even though they're similar kind of characters. Similar characteristics of each other, just to make sure that they have a different speech pattern, just to kind of differentiate them a little bit, because they did have a little bit. They would be a little bit similar, but I actually love her character as well, so that's probably why. I like putting older characters in books. You know, I like having older characters doing stuff. Like she's in her mid-60s and she's like very active, and Vetigan is 108, which was a little nod to Bilbo Baggins as well. So
I'll go ahead. So what do you have in the works right now?
Path of War. So the sequel to Solitude Shadow is in line at its stage. So I just went through the last set I was sent. So we're about 60% done with that one. It's out on July 15th. So we're getting close to the date, but we'll be okay with that one. And I am writing. While that is being finalised, I'm writing the next full Nick Holleran book, which is called one life left. And it's set about a year after The Devil Works in Blood, so we pick it up a little bit when domestic bliss, maybe, between characters. But maybe not as well, because Nick likes to make a lot of mistakes and he thinks he knows best. Quite a lot.
Because Nick's a dude.
He is, yeah. He's a bit silly, but he's one of these people that thinks he makes good decisions for other people, and some people don't like having the decisions made for them by other people, right? So that's a lot of fun to write. So that one, I'm aiming to get that finished by the end of July, and then I will start on the next, the sequel to.
Cool.
I'm dying for the sequel to the Nick Holleran books.
Yeah.
Holleran books.
Holleran. Yeah.
Well, there might be something else coming out soon, Nick Holleran wise. There is a short story that I did in an anthology, which is a lot more horror based, because Nick Holleran does have a bit of horror in there, and so
sure.
there is a horror anthology that I together with some other writers that's set in Nick's world. It's called Last Stop. It's a truck stop horror. But Nick Holleran is the last story in it, and the last chapter in the book, and so it's all set in this one truck stop called Whiskey Pete's in the middle of Idaho, and there's the same cast of characters in each chapter, and other people come into Whiskey Pete's, but they don't leave Whiskey Pete's basically. And Nick Holleran comes investigating at the end, and we find out what happens. But that short story expanded it into a novella, like 45,000 words or something. So that's written. It might be coming out at some point before the next Nick Holleran book. I'm not really sure, but yeah, there'll be a few Nick Holleran books here, I hope.
Fine.
Yeah, very cool.
I was dying at the end of the last book. I was sitting there going, "What's coming?
Yeah.
What's happening? Why is no one telling me?"
So yeah, Nikki. I found that interesting as well. The POV switching, I found to be very interesting, very fun. Because at first you're not sure whose vision it is. But it was a very interesting way to do things, and I hadn't seen that before.
You don't get it a lot in urban fantasy. I read a lot of romance, read smut, and point of view change is huge in those books. So
Right.
I like seeing it in an urban fantasy. It
Yeah, but
really
that chapter, there was a lot of debate about that chapter. I was adamant to keep it in the book, and not everyone agreed with me, but I was adamant it was staying, because I just felt like the main reason for it, there was three reasons for it. One, I wanted to spend some more time with Rosa. I think this is the one you're talking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's where it switches over to Rosa's point of view there towards the
beginning. Obviously it's bookended with different POVs as well, but you can do that in a prologue blog. That's fine. But yeah, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with Rosa, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time with the villain that wasn't coming from Nick's point of view, because I didn't want to go into the. So Rosa's chapter there is the start of the third act, basically. And it's kind of like a prelude between the second and third act, and I didn't want to have it's a balance to get exposition into a book, right? That you need to have. And there is information in the chapter that you need to have, but the other option was to have it happen when Nick was there in the third act, when it's a big action scene. There's a lot of things, and it would have completely slowed down the pace of that ending, I think. So that was the reason why I did it, was because it was like, we can do this chapter here, and when the things are happening with Nick, because obviously when Nick arrives, there's a big battle scene, chase inside, and then there's a big thing, and then there's another big thing that happens. Right? The actual ending of the book is quite a very intimate, small ending. So I didn't want to have another one of those where it's two people just talking to each other. I didn't want to have two of those bits. So that's why I did the change of POV there, because it was, it just made sense to me. And it would have been, I wanted to give Rosa some agency as well and get to know her, because she's going to be around in the books for a while. So but it did cause quite a lot of debate. There was a lot of
well, it served an important purpose. Up to that point with Rosa, all we knew of Rosa was through Nick's eyes. Rosa wasn't her own person; she was Nick's Rosa. If that makes any sense, and that chapter made Rosa a full character. We got an idea of what she was thinking, how she spoke to herself, and how she reacted with the rest of the world. So it served a really important purpose.
Yeah,
especially for a character that's going to be there for a while.
Right. Yeah, and there was I wanted the readers to know a little bit more than Nick did going into that scene. Because obviously there was a bit of a mystery that was going on up until that point about the fog and the mist and the kind of presence watching Nick and everything like that. So I wanted to reveal a little bit to the reader before I did to Nick, and I didn't want him to have to have all this revelation all at the same time, because I just think it would have been too much. So I was like, this is the time to do it, I think. But I'm glad that you liked it. Because, it was. It could have been done.
You know what else it could do would be, I mean, a book from Rosa's point of view. Seeing her stuff, seeing what she, the doubts that she has and things like this. Even that could work. Or a short story where this happened from her point of view could be very interesting. I think.
Yeah. That would be cool. There is something happening later on in the series. I won't give any spoilers, but there is something that there's something that's going to happen, which I hope I've put enough foreshadowing into it, especially in the second book. And even though it's not going to be happening for a few books, I'm every single day, how am I going to do this? Because of the way the book's written, with it being first person itself and next POV, I'm kind of like, what is it I'm going to do with this bit? And I've still not come up with a way of doing it, and I probably won't until I sit down and start writing it.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that's going to be one of those outline lists. But
right.
I'm here for it. I'm here for letting your characters write their own book.
See, I'm afraid of starting to write, and then I write myself into a lost corner. Kind of like the show Lost did in its last 4 seasons or so. I'm not sure they had any idea where it was going to go. Not that it was a bad show. I mean, it had some really entertaining stuff in it. But man, I'm always afraid when I get started, I'm just going to write myself into a corner and never be able to get out.
Yeah, well, you can still do that in an outline as well. Right?
Yeah.
The trick with that, again, like I said, Nikki likes outlines. The trick with that is beta readers. Just beta readers, because they will easily point out any plot holes that you've got, or I like to use my beta readers 3 chapters at a time. So I'll write 3 chapters, and I'll send it off to my beta readers, and then I'll write the next 3 chapters, and I'll read them, send them back, and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a rail. They're the train and the railways, and just lay them down slightly ahead of them. Even if it's not, because if there is a problem that I haven't seen, I don't go too far into the story without it being seen. So that works quite well for me.
So you don't write 6 books and drop them on your beta readers all at once.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Read this by next week.
Yes, yeah. 3 chapters at a time. I'm like, here's 3 chapters. Shouldn't take you too long. Please, just do what you think.
Yeah, we have a guy that comes sometimes to to our interviews and stuff, Steve Donahue, and he's the fastest reader that I know of. I've never seen anybody read. He reads about 150 pages an hour, and he's a book critic. He's the most prolific book critic in the world. Probably reads more than anybody in the world. He reads about 11 to 1,200 books a year, something like that. And when he has a read along, they're always fun, but they're always really, really, what's the word I'm looking for?
Intense?
Yeah, I guess. Really, really intense. You know, you got to read these 300 pages, these 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, 3 chapters at a time is really cool. But I've taken on some reading projects that I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get this finished.
And he's reading the Belgariad with our group. And what we're doing is we're reading 1 book per month. We're on book 4 right now. And you know, he's already read the books like 4 times in the allotted time that we've given him to read those 4 books. He's read all 5 of them, probably written dissertations, done 400 videos, and went back and read them again.
Yeah, that's the
He
way to do it.
averages about 3 YouTube videos a day too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He puts up the same.
That's a real commitment to reading.
Yeah.
He's one of the biggest book critics in the world.
Right.
So
I guess he's earned it.
So one of our last questions is, what are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? I am reading. I just finished reading the whole Lightning Conjurer series by Rachel Renner, which was amazing. We were talking about it just off before we started, and I've just finished the 4th book today. But the 3rd book is just the 4th book is great. It's the confidence, you can see confidence as a writer increases with each book. But the 3rd one is just like there's some passages in that are just absolutely amazing. It's got like one of the best chapters I've ever read in my whole life. Like it's just an amazing it's a urban fantasy, very, very inventive, really, really great book. So I've read that one. I'm just rereading. I don't know if you've read J.A. Andrews, who does the Chronicles.
Have not read those yet.
Yeah, they're really great. I've read the Keeper Chronicles series. It's a trilogy. It's 2 trilogies now. The 2nd trilogy is complete. So the 1st trilogy is called the Keeper Chronicles, and well, Nikki also has one of the best chapters that I've ever read as well, which is
Yes.
Yeah, I still can't even describe it. It's so good, but I understood everything, but I can't describe it. That's how good that chapter is.
It's the mind losing chapter, right?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
It made me cry.
Yeah. But J. Andrews. So it's the Keeper Chronicles. They're really great. They're high fantasy, but they're all told from the point of view of like librarians and historians and like really kind of like low-level mages that are not adventurers, but they end up getting into these kind of situations. And they're all just standalone stories, but kind of linked, and they're all set in the same world. So a new book came out recently, the 2nd trilogy called the Keeper Origins trilogy. But me being me, I had to reread the whole series before I read that last one. So I've just started reading the 1st book in the Keeper Chronicles series, and they're really, really good. Kind of cozy fantasy in a way, but there is still really good stakes and high stakes in them.
Okay. I'm writing that down because I'm going to have to check those out.
Yeah, they're really great. They're really great.
You do read a lot. Do you read fast?
Not as fast as I'd like, but yes, I read. I try and read as much as I can. I don't quite read as much as I used to, unfortunately, because I write more than I used to, which was didn't write at all. So there's some.
It's a terrible problem to have.
Right. But yeah, I do read. I'm a habitual rereader, though. That's the thing. Like, if I didn't reread as much, I'd read a lot more. Right? But I can't help it. I just love rereading something. It's like putting on my favorite coat or blanket or something. It's great.
Oh man, I can't do it. I can't reread. There's like 3 or 4 books that I've reread. The Belgariad being 5 of them. I have the worst attention span in the world, so rereading books just does not work for me.
I've been you want to talk? You were talking about formula earlier, and David Eddings, in his formula and all that. I'm reading westerns right now. You want to talk about formula? Now, nothing follows a formula closer than a western. Like, they're all pretty well the same story. Almost all westerns are nearly the same story, just told in a slightly different way by slightly different voices. But to me, that doesn't make them any. It almost makes them cozy. Even though there are a lot of westerns that are extremely problematic in their language about race and things like that.
Right.
I mean, to read a western, you have to be able to read things in context and have pretty thick skin. But they are a lot of fun. But
yeah, I like westerns too. I like western movies and everything. I'd love to write a fantasy western at one point. I read one time. I read Joe Abercrombie did a fantasy western, and it was brilliant. It was really, really good. It's called Red Country. It's set in his First Law universe. It's a standalone one. It was really, really good. But I'd love to write one of those. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
There's no horror westerns. That's how you get Bone Tomahawk, and just no.
That was great fun. I like that film.
I'm still a little traumatized.
The author I was trying to think of earlier, the Irish writer who writes Japanese horror stories, was Lafcadio Hearn.
Okay.
So if you ever get a chance, I mean, there's a great.
It's a great name.
Yeah, there's a great Penguin edition of his Japanese horror stories that's really good. But
yeah, I'll check those out. I do like Japanese fiction as well, so it'll be interesting to see an Irish take on it. It'll be quite interesting because I really like what's the guy's name now? Murakami. I really like him.
Yeah, there's a few books by him that Becky's willing to read. So where can everybody find you and find your books?
So best place to find me is on my two places. My website, which is just davidgreenwriter.com, and the other place, which is just kind of a new place, is my Facebook group, which is called The Readerverse of Madness. So yeah,
it's a very good group too. I'm a member of that group, and it's active, it's friendly. So I like that, finding a friendly group. There's one for horror I like to be in that I found is very friendly. I've made a new group that's friendly, and your group is very friendly. Unfortunately, most Facebook groups end up being a bunch of infighting and being full of and bullying, but your group is great. I enjoy it a lot.
We're all to be able to be weird in peace.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's nice. It's more active than what I thought it would be because it's new. But yeah, people seem to have a good time in there. So that's the best two places to find me. I'm always happy to have a chat and talk about books.
Yeah, and you also have a YouTube channel.
I do. I always forget about it, but yes, I do.
Okay. And I've watched a lot of David's interviews. David does very good interviews. He doesn't ramble on like we do most of the time. But
what are you trying to say?
but yeah, I've learned about quite a few writers through your Facebook group because through your YouTube channel. You've done a lot of videos with interviewing authors.
Yeah, I enjoy it. So the YouTube the YouTube channel. It makes me sound like an egomaniac. It's called like the worlds of David Green. But I was just like, what can I call it? I don't know what to call it. And I was like, I have to have my own name in it because it's like, whatever. But so that's what it's called. And it's mostly about other people. There's very little stuff about me on there. It's all about it's all interviews of other authors. So I had some really successful authors on there, like Steve McHugh, Rob Hayes, Justin Lee Anderson. They're all Spiffbo winners and Gimel Award nominees and everything. Jay Andrews was on there as well recently. Well, I have Readerverse of Madness, Nicky. That's the group. But I also have like new authors that are just starting out that have their first book, or they have just a couple of books, and it's great to talk to them all. Just how you guys do it. It's great to talk to people about the process and try and give them a bit of a leg up. And if one of my interviews means that they get an extra book sale or a few more followers on the social media, then that's great, because that's what I'm trying to help them out with. So yeah, I love doing it.
That's how we feel.
Yeah. That's what we've been trying to do the last couple of months, especially is talk to people who go through small publishing houses, or just completely independently, self-published and things like that. These books are as good, or in our experience, 90% or it's better than 90% of the mainstream stuff that's out there that we've read. Mm-hmm. Because it seems to be more personal. There are less people involved in the changes,
right?
And the writer gets a final say on some of the stuff, whereas a lot of the bigger publishing houses just don't allow.
Sure. Yeah.
That's why books get interesting points of view.
Yeah.
There's different voices, and I think that's the thing now with indie. So be it small press. Hi, Ashlyn. Aslin, I think as he.
Hi, how are you?
That's the thing now with indie, with self-publishing or small press, is that maybe 10 years ago the quality wasn't always there. I think it's fair to say, but now. Nowadays, you get a lot of people that were traditionally published authors that have gone indie or self-published, because it's like, I've got more freedom to do this, or I can do something more personal, as you were saying, and it's a really and you have a lot of people that decide that is the route for them now, because they don't Nikki, you've read the Spiral is as good, if not better than, and more inventive certainly than lots of horror these days. But she decided that she wanted to control every aspect of the book, and you can do that these days. It doesn't mean the quality is any different. So yeah, I'm with you.
And I'm not sure the Spiral would have been the same book if it had gone through Simon & Schuster or some large publisher. I just don't think it would be.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, and it would have lost something. So yeah.
They'd have buggered that book all up.
Yeah, I think so.
There would have been a lot less church scenes in it, I think.
Yeah, and I think the scene you were talking about earlier with the breakdown probably may not have made it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's such an amazing chapter. And it was one of those chapters that, like, I was reading it and I was beta reading it, and I just was like, I think the comment that I made was more, and I've said this to Nikki since, I was just like, that I could never write a chapter like that, and it was just such skill that went into it. So if that had gone in a traditional way and it had been taken out, it would have been such a travesty, because it is just such an inventive chapter.
I think about that chapter regularly.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It's so beautiful.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It made me cry.
And your books are available on Amazon. Are they available through your website or is it Amazon?
Yeah, it's Amazon. So the links on my website go to Amazon. Or Solitude Shadow is wide, so you can get it from anywhere, like Kobo and Apple and all that kind of stuff. And you can get them from Barnes and Noble and all that kind of place. Nick, the Devil Walks in Blood special edition is on Kindle. But you can also just get them straight from Erie River Publishing as well, and you'll get them a little bit cheaper, I think, that way. So,
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm getting new covers for Solitude Shadow and Path of War when that releases, and I will have some signed copies as well that I'll be sending out to people.
Awesome.
And so we reached the hour mark and blew right past it. We're at an hour and a half. I think I have yammered on enough. So thank you so much for doing this with us. This was a wonderful interview. We had a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Yeah. So just a reminder for those watching, this is David Green. He's the author of In Solitude Shadow. If you want to hold up your gorgeous hard copies. Yeah, beautiful.
And this one is one of a kind, because the first convention that I ever went to, I got all the other authors that I was on panels with to sign it. So, like Adrian Tchaikovsky, Anastasia Spark, some other great authors in there. So I was like, it was nice because maybe I'll be like a real fanboy and just go around and say, "Could you sign my book, please?" Like, so I've got it myself.
But how awesome is it that you're the author name on that book?
Right, it's so amazing. Yeah, it's crazy. It is. Yeah.
He's also the author of Dead Man Walking and The Devil Walks in Blood. Look at that cover. I love it.
Yeah. And that version actually has Dead Man Walking and The Devil Walks in Blood, right?
It does. It has Dead Man. This is the special edition, so it has it has Dead Man Walking and Devil Walks in Blood together. So this is the special Devil Walks in Blood special edition, and it is the best version to get. It's the best value for money one by far.
And for those watching, if you're a fan of fantasy or urban fantasy, they are wonderful books.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I've read a lot of fantasy. I've read some urban fantasy, and the thing is, I'm not usually a fan of urban fantasy, but I really enjoyed the Nick Holleran series.
Yeah, you might want to check out the Night Side series. I think you'd really enjoy it.
I will check it out because people have said it to me before, like check it out because you must have read it, and I'm like, no. I get it.
Right. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, David.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we had a great time. Thank you very much. And we'll have to do this again. When you release another book, maybe with your next Nick Holleran book, we would love to talk to you. Or if you want to come on and discuss horror films with us, we have a channel over there. So yeah, we would love that too. Yeah, when the next Nick Holleran book comes out, you can come on and we can rate before you put Nick through.
Right, yeah, because you'll have Path of War and the next Nick Holleran then, so we can do it all again.
All right. Cool.
But yeah, I love horror films, so yeah, any time.
Okay, cool.
All right, so have a great evening. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
See you.